Hey there everyone, it's GG Sober Sun. I'm tucked up here in the cleft of some riprap because the wind is a whipping this morning, so hopefully this records okay. October the 9th. Am I willing to be bored sometimes at meetings? Am I willing to listen to much repetition of AA principles? Am I willing to hear the same thing over and over again? Am I willing to listen to a long, blow-by-blow personal story because it might help some new member? Am I willing to sit quietly and listen to long-winded members go into every detail of their past? Am I willing to take it because it is doing them good to get it off their chest? My feelings are not too important. I disagree with that, but the good of AA comes first, even if it is not always comfortable for me. Have I learned to take it? Just sit there and take it. Wow. AA unity is important. And yes, some people, and I know I spot it because I got it. I have the ability to drone on. And from my perspective, I'm airing out my thoughts. I'm working through something, right? And the beautiful thing about AA is typically people don't get interrupted. Sometimes meetings have rules for time limits. Some meetings have a suggested time limit per share. Recently I've been kind of focused on basically changing up the amount that I share, the amount of time I share, or just being more mindful about that myself, right? And I don't necessarily see it as taking it, right? That sounds so almost like stuff it. Your feelings don't matter, the way that's written, right? But that's not the case. My best sponsor shared with me that he said, there are certain people I don't want to hear, I don't want to listen to. He said, whenever I feel like that, I think, oh, well, maybe God's got something that I need to hear, and the disease is trying to keep me from hearing it. And that's where my restless irritability and discontentment comes from. So as a matter of practicing these principles in all my affairs and in the meetings especially, I will focus in on what they're saying and try to find something and trust, not try, but trust that I will find something that I can relate to that person says. And I know there's times when it's like, I don't want to necessarily give somebody too much attention because then they might, get a charge out of that, and then, and then talk for longer. But, when there's a speaker meeting especially, I want to be tuned in, for sure. I want to be tuned in to what the speaker is saying, because I might I might miss something that I need. And you know, when I find myself, and this is really more about me regulating us as individuals, regulating our emotions. You know, if there's somebody that I kind of roll my eyes at, you know, internally, you know, maybe not outwardly, but internally I'm rolling my eyes when they start to speak, then that's something within me. That's a lack of patience and the ability to relate. So Dr. Jordan Peterson says that when you really listen to people, you can become fascinated by them, really. And he's a clinical psychologist, and his thing was, you know, most people just have never been heard, and that's all they need, and they need such little encouragement. And he would get teary-eyed when he talks about it, you know. So many people are hurting, like really hurting, and if we just take the time to listen to them rather than what our next response is going to be, then we become fascinated in that frame of mind. And there's times when I'm sitting in a meeting and I'm just like ho hum, blah blah blah, you know. Sometimes during you know, my home group does a big book study every Tuesday, and I like to make that meeting, even though a lot of it I've heard before. You know, I've been to big book meetings, and this big book meeting has been going on for a while. There's still, and even if we mostly only read during the meeting, there's something that I get out of every reading, especially the stories in the back, you know. And I like to cross-reference things, you know, so I kind of stay busy during the meeting. But, and you know, if there's something you pick up on in somebody's voice, that either they're intellectualizing their problems, which I like to do, or there's something that actually slips out that they didn't intend to, because they're usually pretty guarded, and I hear them be authentic about their feelings. I like to look up and nod and, you know, show them, hey, keep that up, man. That's the language of the heart, you know. And I know that may sound kind of judgmental of me, but if you've been in the rooms a while, there are certain things you can pick up on if you pay attention. And you know, some old timers really like to, and you know, I haven't had a drink since 1992, so I guess I'm an old timer as well. I don't feel like it, right? But I've been in the rooms a while. Not that I haven't been in AA that entire time, because I took about a 3 or 4 year hiatus fairly early on in sobriety. But I've been in the rooms long enough to know that, you know, I can, you know, inform people about AA history and writing of books and blah-de, 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 right? But when I get too much into that, that's ego. That's not the language of the heart. Telling stories, sharing my story of my drinking days and or the problems I deal with now, because guess what? Being sober and in AA doesn't render us free of problems. And sometimes I can get into salesman mode about AA and think that I can't talk about my problems. Well, that's the language of the heart. How did I ever share my story to any good degree of effectiveness without sharing the problems I had? And I still have problems, and that's just the human condition. Some people are like, you share the message, not the mess. Well, the message is, even in sobriety, we have problems. And even in sobriety, the 12 steps are a plan for living that really works in the present. So how can I share that without sharing present problems? And so there you have it. Meditation for the day. God would draw us all closer to Him in the bonds of the Spirit. He would have all people draw closer to each other in the bonds of the Spirit. God, the great Spirit of the universe, of which each of our own spirits is a small part, must want unity between Himself and His children. Unity of the Spirit in the bonds of peace. Each experience of our life, of joy, of sorrow, of danger, of safety, of difficulty, of success, of hardship, of ease, each should be accepted as part of our common lot in the bonds of the Spirit. And that's exactly what I was just talking about, you know. God puts us all together. That's how we stay sober. Unity of the Spirit and community. Unity of community. Right? That's what, you know, I can't quote the page or chapter, but it says, we're like the survivors of a great ocean liner that sank. Basically, it doesn't matter where your cabin was or where your berth was on the ship. You're in the lifeboat, and you're all grateful to have survived. And we have a common bond, common experience, right? That we've had our butts handed to us by alcohol. So to think any one person is better than the other, just be grateful you're safe. Just be grateful you've survived all that. And that we can find a common bond. I'm so grateful that in this election season, that politics rarely come up during the meeting. We're there, and we're keeping the main thing. And it's wonderful. It is a wonderful reprieve. You know, and if somebody dare bring it up, it's like, oh my God, really, dude? You gonna talk about politics in AA? You know, and Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob, I think, were really about that as well. Avoiding any kind of, you know, the book says we cease fighting anything and everyone. Anything and anyone. And so that is extremely important in recovery. You know, we only fight alcohol, and we don't really even fight. We cease fighting, right? We recoil from alcohol like a hot flame. We have a daily reprieve based upon our spiritual condition. So that's something to be mindful of every day. Prayer for the day. I pray that I may welcome the bonds of true fellowship. I pray that I may be brought closer to unity with God and other people. Other people are in recovery are like God, have been likened to God with skin on, right? And if you're like me and you believe that God is an omnipotent being, He's everywhere at once. He's in these rocks as much as in the ocean, in that concrete as much as he is in my flesh, right? He fills every fiber of our being, and everything that is considered matter, even the clouds, the sun, you know, what seems like empty space isn't empty space. If we had the eyes to see, we could see it. But so we're all God with skin on. So be open to that. Let that spirit in. Let that spirit flow through you and to other people. But most importantly, y'all, keep coming back. Look up. Aim up. Rise up.